All right. Should be live. I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com and the English Fluency Guide. Welcome to another live video here on YouTube. We'll give people a moment to come in. We'll see if hopefully the chat is working. Let me see if chat is working today. I think we should be all right. And yeah, that should be an entertaining video. All right, chat is working, and we are live. Glad to hear it. Okay, all right. Nice to see you, George there. Blue, let's see. Remember me at Roblox. Blue butterfly at Roblox. Remember me. I don't know. Are you telling me to remember you, or are you asking me? There's no question mark there. All right, but it looks like live is working. Chat is working too. This should be a fun video, but it's going to be a little bit more, kind of tricky than usual. So nice to see everybody there. Basically, what we're going to talk about is how to make fluent sentences as you speak. So let me give you just two very basic examples. I thought this would be a good way to explain how this works. So when you are speaking your native language, or someone is just speaking fluently in a language, actually before we do that, let's contrast these two different things here. So I'm going to draw, we're going to pretend this is like a train over here. So like a steam train. Here's a train like that. Very simple. So what we're doing here as a native speaker is, if you imagine you're the person, like we call this the train conductor or the engineer. So you're the person driving the train, and as you move the train forward, so here's the track like that, you're almost like reaching out in front of you and putting more track in front of you as the train moves forward. Okay? This will make more sense in a moment, but I thought this might be a good way to explain this to people. So you're in the train, and the train is moving forward, and as you move forward, you are actually laying the track in front of you. So the train moves forward, you put some more train track down here, and you keep moving forward like that. Okay? So this is like the fluent communication experience. So when you're in a conversation, you're speaking with people, the conversation is moving forward, and you're continuing to lay down the things you want to say as you're having the conversation. Okay? Now, the opposite of this is what we might have for like a typical learner. So a typical learner has a train. It's like the same kind of train. We'll make another steam train like this. And the person is inside, so this is the English learner, or the learner of that second language. And the difference here is that this person is trying to, they get out of the train, and they want to go lay down a bunch of track first and then move the train forward. All right? So instead of moving the train and laying the track at the same time, what they're doing is thinking about what to say, translating it, probably thinking about grammar rules, they're wondering about pronunciation, and so they think about all these things first. So that's like laying this train track down here, and then they move the train forward. So communication that's fluent means that we're actually moving the train while we lay the track. So we're able to think of what to say as we're speaking. Okay, so I'm thinking of something new and I speak. I'm thinking of something new and I speak, and I keep moving forward. But for the non-fluent person, they're thinking first about what to say, and then they're like, okay, let me get out of the train, and I got to lay all this track down here first. I get back in the train and then move the train forward. Does this make sense? I know this is I've not explained it in this way before, but I thought this would be like a good way to explain this to people. So this is the non or not fluent, so non-fluent. So So this is the fluent experience up here. This is the non-fluent experience down here. It would probably be better with an animation, I guess, but hopefully this makes sense. Again, I'll explain this one more time, then I'll go back and look at chat, and then we'll talk about how to do these things. All right, so again, the fluent experience, you're in the train, and while you're in the train, you are driving the train and you are laying the track. So you are communicating and you are thinking about what to say. All right, so you can think about these two things, like this is the speaking part, you're moving the train forward, and you're still thinking about what to say next. So it's a very fluid level where you can communicate and think at the same time, and communication flows smoothly. But here, you're trying to say some words, but first you have to think about everything you want to say. So first you have to lay down the track, you have to organize the sentence in your head, and then you speak. So you put down the track, you move forward a little bit. Then you put down some more track and you move forward a little bit. But there's all this hesitation that happens because you have to stop and think, and you're worried about things in conversations. Let me know if this makes sense. I'm going to go back and check chat, but we're going to talk about how to do this up here in this video, all right? Hopefully this makes sense. Let me check the chat, see how everybody is doing out there. It's so nice to have this back on my phone again. So let's see. Hello, Professor. Good evening. My name is, you'd say my name is Julio. I am from Brazil. Nice to see you there. Hi there. Let's see. Hi, people. Nice to see everybody. I love your videos, and you have helped me a lot. Glad to hear it. Yeah, please like the video. Share it with other people. Say, come watch this video. Everybody click that like button right now. Indra says, sir, watching from Qatar. It's 4 a.m. here. Oh, my goodness. When I speak, I forgot everything. Why? Says Lika, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Well, there are a couple of reasons why that happens. I'll talk about that in this video, actually. But typically, it's because you're learning English as a second language rather than learning it as a first language, which is what I teach. So learning English as a second language makes you do this. And it means that you're learning to think about rules, and you think about English kind of as a linguist, or theoretically, or trying to think about rules logically rather than just enjoying communication. Okay? And so what we want you to do is actually communicate fluently up here. And so forgetting words is part of the problem of like what happens when you learn as a second language. So this is learning English as a first language up here, learning English as a second language down here. All right. Nice to see more people coming in. Click that like button. All right. Let's see here. All right. So happy to catch you live again a second time, says Eric. Yeah, glad to hear. Arturo is back with a nice smiley heart there. Ildar says, glad to see you this morning. Tomoko says, hello, Ita, good morning. And Bruno, what's up, y'all? What is the level of this lesson? Well, the level of my lesson is, in general, I'm not using very like fast English or very difficult English. It's probably stuff that most intermediate speakers would know, even if you can't speak. So you can still learn a lot from these lessons, and my training is supposed to get you from this level to this level up here. Hello from Argentina, long time no see. All right, hello from Korea, nice to see her. From Sri Lanka, Tsubasa is in the house. I learned a lot from your videos, sir. I am from India. Nice to see you there. Thank you very much. Why forget words in English after one day? Because you're not, people think that they're going to remember a word if they review it one time. It's like, okay, I had a lesson today and I forgot the lesson the next day. Well, of course you're going to forget the lesson. The mind doesn't remember information like that. You have to think about how you learn and how you review. And most people don't get those things very well, and that's why they have trouble speaking. So Andrew says, could you please explain the difference between adjacent and neighbor? You can Google that. I'm going to talk about this in this video, but we can come back to something like that maybe. Remind me again. Tony says, hello, sir, watching from Kuwait. Sometimes I speak perfect in my mind, but I cannot say it orally. What is the issue here? This is the issue. Now, it could be that maybe people are thinking about, maybe they're worried about other people thinking about their pronunciation or something. So there are different reasons why maybe you can think of something in your head, or you can talk to yourself, but you feel nervous when you get in front of other people. So that's a problem that happens. But it's easier if you think about rather than trying to organize sentences or worry about, your like the individual pieces of the language, like pronunciation or grammar or something, we want to help you start thinking more like a native so that you can lay the track as you speak. And even if you don't do it perfectly, I want you to not really think about doing it perfectly. It's more like, I don't want to like tell you to make mistakes, but I will tell you that there are many ways of expressing yourself. All right. So one of the reasons that people have trouble with this is just like how they learn. And part of that comes from translating through their native language rather than learning everything in English. But it's really important, even if you learn in English, like how exactly you learn so that you always have something to say. All right. And the important thing here is like when you always have something to say, you can lay the track as you move the train forward. Okay, you can lay the track so you can think about what to say as you're speaking, just like I'm doing right now. So I don't have like a planned lesson. I don't have a script that I'm reading right now. I'm just laying the track as I move the train forward. All right. Now, if you want to do this too, how I'm able to do this, I'm going to explain that right now. All right. So I talked just a minute ago about learning English as a first language. And a big part of that is that we begin again with a situation. So whatever that is, like if I have like a marker in my hand, I'm holding the marker, or I'm grabbing the marker, or the marker is resting on my hand. There are different ways that I'm able to express this. And so a native speaker, they see many times like a situation might happen, like their mother says, "Come on, it's time for dinner." And someone might say, "It's time to go," or "Let's get ready." There are a couple different things that you can say in this situation. And when you have all these different things, I don't want to make another like analogy here, but it's almost like having like a gun where you've got many bullets in the gun. And if one bullet doesn't work, you can easily switch to the next one and then see everybody able to express themselves just fine without thinking about it. All right. So what usually happens when you learn English as a first language is you begin with something in your native language that you want to say, and then you try to translate that into English, and that's what's causing a lot of this. So you're thinking about grammar rules or how do I organize the sentence when you should be just thinking about the situation. Because when you're in a conversation, either you're in like that same situation and then you can use that same vocabulary again, or you're talking about some situation. So everything in a conversation is like that. Either I'm doing something right now, like I'm swinging a baseball bat. So that's the situation I'm in right now. Or I could be talking about swinging a baseball bat. But because I've heard lots of people talking about swinging baseball bats, and I know the different expressions they use for talking about that, it's much easier for me to say something in a conversation without thinking about it. So I'm not thinking in my head like, okay, I want to organize this sentence and say that. I actually am able to think about things as I speak. And that's what it means to communicate fluently. So without having to think about everything before you start speaking. All right. Hopefully this makes sense. So I gave the example of like swinging a baseball bat, but this is really easy to do even with something simple. So again, what I really want people to understand that it's the situations that if you pay attention to what natives say in situations, then when you are in that same situation, that vocabulary will come to you naturally. All right, it's how you learn the vocabulary. So I'm looking at that. I'm in a situation, like I see someone, they say hello to me. And another person says hi. And another person says howdy. And another person says, hey, how are you? So even if you look at like the people in this chat, if you go up and look at the messages, the different greetings that people have, people are greeting me in different ways. Tom is there too. Nice to see you. Tom, thank you very much for sending us those videos as well. Tom made some shorts for us, and we're going to try to make some. I put one up yesterday. If you have not seen that, you can go to the channel. But because these videos are long and I answer lots of questions, I thought it was a good idea to take some of those pieces of videos and just release them as their own thing. All right. So even something very simple like sitting down. So sitting down, we can describe that in different ways. So the situation is like a person on a chair or something like that. What can we say in that situation? So the situation is this: a person sitting in a chair. We might say, sit down. What else could we say? What else have you heard natives say in this situation? So that, again, we want to have like many bullets in the gun. Have a seat. Perfect, says Orion. Have a seat. So I could say sit down. I could say have a seat. What else could I say? Have you heard anybody use anything else in this situation? So someone comes to my house. I want to like, take a seat. There you go. You can say take a seat. Now there is a slight nuance here between have a seat and take a seat. Have sounds a little bit more polite, and take is, because usually when people take something, it's just kind of, it's like a little bit more casual, like you're taking something rather than just, oh, like please have a seat. So usually if people are being a bit more polite, you can say have a seat, but take a seat, it also sounds a little bit more like an order. Like take a seat, like if you tell some students or children or something like that. Typically you would hear that more for take a seat, and for like maybe more polite situation you would tell people to have a seat. All right. You can also say like take a load off. Take a load off. Or you can say, you can just tell someone to relax. So take a load off, it's like you've got, like imagine you're carrying something and you've been walking for a long time. You're going to put your bag down. I'm going to take a load off, and now I'm just going to sit back and relax. All right, so take a load off. So what happens as native speakers are getting all these different examples. So they hear these, their mom or dad or teacher tells them to do these things. Then when they're in this situation, and they're in that situation in a conversation, then these expressions will naturally come out. They'll just naturally pick one. All right? Could you have a seat? Yep, same thing. So a slight difference. So you could say, could you? So could you have a seat? Or would you have a seat? So could you have a seat, or would you have a seat? Or would you like to sit down? There are slight variations of all of these things, but we're learning them as a native. So right now I'm teaching you the same way that I would teach a native child these different things. So a child would sit down, and I'm pointing at the chair, like have a seat, sit down. So I say this to my own children all the time. They want to climb on the chairs at dinner time. I say, no, have a seat, relax, take a load off, have a seat. So even if they don't know exactly what this means, they're learning this as a complete phrase, and now they understand what it means. Okay? So again, if I'm thinking about things as a first language, I'm thinking about a situation like sitting down, and there are lots of different ways I can do that, then I don't need to remember all of these, but I will be probably prepared for a lot of them, and I can just, pick one that I use a lot. That's fine. So I could tell people, have a seat. So I like using have a seat. Sit down sounds a little bit more, it's a little bit more of a, like a command. You're telling someone to do something. Or you could say, please have a seat. Please take a seat. So often if you have a group of people, you will hear like a principal at a school or something, they will say, please take your seats. Yes, the imperative. I'm not trying to use like a difficult, I really don't like using the typical grammatical terms in lessons because you don't need to know that. But you do need to know, you can understand emotionally, say, take a seat. Take a seat. If I'm being a little bit angry, a little bit forceful, sit down. So if I'm being a little bit more angry, but it's different from, please have a seat. Please have a seat. So I don't need to explain to you, well, this is the imperative and this is this other thing. You don't need to know about all that. Okay? So yes, a lot of like the people who watch my lessons, can I have a seat? So you can ask if you're asking someone else for permission. Can I have a seat? Or typically, and this is like an actual grammar point, but typically you would ask someone for permission is may. May I have a seat? May I have a seat? So people conversationally in English, they will say, can I do something? But that's really asking for like the ability to do something. And so many years ago, teachers would often correct students. Yeah, look at Bruno. Grab a chair, dude. Grab a chair. Grab a chair. Pull up a chair. Pull up a seat. Have a seat. All right. Tony says, why is it that some are good at penning down things than speaking? You mean writing? Yes. Can I have a seat? You can ask that. All right. But typically, if you're asking for permission, may I? May I have a seat? So it sounds a little bit more formal just because the language gets worse over time. People get like the standards of using the language get worse, and lots of young kids are using phones and they don't type full sentences, and their grammar and pronunciation get worse. So the language gets worse over time if you don't maintain the standards of the language. That's why you will hear, can I have a seat, rather than may I have a seat. But you can use both of those in a conversation. Oh, can I sit down? Can I sit down? May I sit down? But isn't this interesting? Just for this situation of sitting, there are all these different ways of expressing that. And you're learning it as a first language. Park your keister. There you go. Yeah, put your butt in that seat. Sit your ass down. If you want to be angry at people, man, sit your ass down. Okay? So a lot of different ways to do it. And you notice as you hear these different things, there are slight differences in how I'm saying it. So I might say, like, again, you notice the slight difference if I'm being polite or if I'm being casual. All right. Yeah, take a load off. It's uncommon. Yes. Okay. Yeah, park your keister. Yeah. Yeah, park your ass in a chair. Sit your butt down. Depending on how different you want to express, and you will notice the slight nuances. So we've got sitting and politeness together as one idea. So the situation is not just sitting, it's sitting and how polite do you want to be? Am I angry at my child and want them to sit down? Or do I have a guest in my home? All right, when we use might and shall, it's a whole other lesson. I don't want to get into too much detail about like specific grammar types. Okay, so will you sit down? Like if you're being more forceful with someone, will you please sit down? So my kids, they're jumping around in a restaurant or something, and I say, will you sit down? And they can hear from the tone of my voice, so it's not just my words. They watch my face and they can hear the tone of my voice, what I'm saying. But again, the point of giving you all these examples is that so you have all these bullets in your gun when you want to actually express something. So when someone comes to your house and it's like, oh, I don't remember which one of these to say, you're not thinking about it like an English learner. You're just, okay, I just, have people come in and sit down. Please have a seat. And you're also prepared when other people say these things to you. Is this making sense? So if you want to be able to actually communicate, how you learn is how you speak. And that's why I'm trying to make this connection with you here, where we have the situation. Either you're in a situation or you're talking about a situation, and that's how you're able to communicate. But the ability to communicate comes from how you learn. So if you're down here and you're trying to learn things by translating or study grammar rules, then of course when you're here you will think about grammar rules when you speak. So here I'm not trying to get you to think about grammar rules. I'm trying to get you to think about situations and then slight nuances. Like if I say please have a seat, you can tell I'm being polite. But if I say sit your ass down, then I'm not being very polite. I'm a little bit angry or frustrated or something. So the situation is slightly different, but you're learning it as a native. You can connect with what I'm saying rather than me telling a rule about it. Okay? All right, let me go back and check the chat, see if I missed anybody or if people have any questions. But let me know if this idea makes sense. The whole point here is that how you learn is how you speak. So if you think about translations and grammar rules and other things when you learn, then when you are in a conversation, that's why you will hesitate and forget words and struggle to speak. Park your keys to no, that is not a polite way to speak. And so you will, and people don't really use that expression. It's kind of an older expression, like from Western movies or something. But I mean, you don't really hear that so much. All right, let's see. I think I answered those questions already. I take a lot of screenshots of perfect sentences. I just collect, and it's getting stored, but never ring a bell while talking, says Syed. Yes, like just collecting information isn't really going to help you speak. So you notice, like, I'm not trying to cover every situation in this video. We're just talking about one, something very simple like sitting down. But the point is that, like, all of communication works like this. So even if I'm not talking about sitting down, I could be talking about anything else. And I can give you more examples of a variety of things to say. But that's, again, when you're thinking about a situation, natives will always have different ways of expressing things. And even if we just look at grammar, like we have like may and can and should and why don't you, those are all different grammar constructions, but we can use them in the same situation. And so when you learn something like that, like if I ask someone, why don't you sit down? Why don't you sit down? So someone might be like, oh, they're looking a little bit tired. I say, oh, please have a seat. Why don't you sit down? So I'm asking them, I'm inviting them to sit down. All right. Aran says, it is passive knowledge. We forget the word at the same time we can recognize it. Yes. So recognition is much easier than recall. I made a whole video about that too. Fried Star, how to not translate English into our native language when we read English books. Well, the key to doing that is to read books that you understand. And so you shouldn't be reading books where you have to translate the information. You should be reading things that you can understand, and then you will get better at reading. And then you can move up to something much more difficult. All right. What is your idea of a good review? Sometimes I listen to the same audio so many times I can get burned out. Yes, says Bruno. Again, that's why I recommend naturally varied review. The whole point is to be varied about it because the mind is naturally interested in new information all the time. So the mind is like, okay, I heard that grammar already, Drew. I don't want to review that again, but you still can't use it fluently. So that's like the core problem of language learning is you have to learn vocabulary and then review the vocabulary, but your brain doesn't want to. So this is the actual problem of language learning. Like the learning of stuff is pretty easy. Like even like this, I can teach you a bunch of phrases, but you need to review those in different ways and see natives using them and then actually hear different natives saying those same expressions. Okay, so it's the review that gets you fluent. It's not the vocabulary by itself. All right. Let's see. Oh no, the chat. See, now this chat skips down too. All right. Let's see. Taufik says, why can I understand English teachers, but I don't understand normal people who speak fast and informal? Well, you just answered your own question. So normal people are speaking differently than English teachers. And that's why, like, you can't just watch an English video or many English videos and then jump to fluency. It doesn't really work that way. You have to be exposed to lots of actual native speakers. That's why we put all those native speakers into Fluent for Life. So you have to be learning the same way. I mean, think about learning your native language. If you only were in school learning things and you didn't hear real people on TV or radio or in your community talking, then it would be really difficult for you. Lalu says, did you use, so you would say, did you use images for memorizing words, particularly adverb or adjective word? I find it difficult for memorizing adjectives and adverbs. He. Let's see. I mean, I don't really use like an image, like a picture of something, so much as I just use the situation. So if I have somebody that's like, walk, like I'm teaching a child the language. Look, that person is walking. I want to contrast that with with jump or run or something like that. But if I want to use an adjective or an adverb or something, just to give like the adverb example, so we've got walk, and then we got walk slowly. Okay, moving very slowly. Or we got walk quickly. Walk quickly. So I'm not running, I'm just walking quickly. And so as you see those, again, it's the situation. So what vocabulary do people use? Like when the person is moving quickly, they use the word quickly. So the situation, fast movement, here's the vocabulary, quickly. So that's your adverb. But people don't, like a native speaker, if you say, hey, what is an adverb? They're not going to be able to tell you what an adverb is, but they can use them fluently. And so this is why like a person learning English as a second language will like study a list of adverbs. But a person learning English as a first language, they will see a bunch of different examples. Here's a person walking slowly. Here's a person walking quickly. Here's a person walking without looking where they're going. And so I can change the examples slightly and still people will understand what I'm talking about. But I'm teaching them as a first language, the same way I would teach my kids. All right. Mariela says, good evening from Ecuador. Nice to see you there. All right, that's John says, that's actually my worst nightmare. I use prearranged sentences and a lot. I literally am always stuck. Yes. So again, like trying to organize this, and this is a similar thing. Like if you're trying to learn how to talk to women, like as like young men, you know, they want to meet women or whatever. A lot of them are trying to learn about talking to women this way. So they're trying to learn a bunch of lines or sentences that they should say to women when they approach them. But really, if you learn how to communicate, like the conversation flows much more easily. It's the exact same way. Okay. All right. Let's see if I missed anybody. All right. I think I got those questions over there. All right. Yes. All right. Pardon me as I read through these quickly. Yes. All right. Let me get back to the... All right. Iran says wuss equals slang for what is, and poppin' is slang. Well, you'd say, I mean, we wouldn't say like wuss. It's not like wuss poppin'. I mean, it's, you kind of pronounce it like that, but it's like, again, this is slang for like younger people would use that, like what's happening, what's poppin'. But you still, you don't really, I mean, I guess maybe some people could pronounce it wuss poppin'. Could we use images for recreating situations? Well, you can use that, but like video is even better because it's showing you the movement. So that's why, like when I made Frederick, there's some animations and some just still images. So if you see a picture of a cat, you can guess what a cat is. But if I'm showing a cat like doing something, that's a much more tricky idea to understand with just an image. And so that's why, like, having someone sit down, you need to get the tone of voice, you need to get the vocabulary, you need to get just the general look of their face. So do I look angry? Do I look kind and hospitable? Do I look like I'm welcoming a guest, or am I angry at somebody? So all of those different things, they come from learning English as a first language, because we're really trying to get the subtleties of a situation. So it's not just sitting down, but are you being kind or angry or whatever? So it's different than learning like this, where we're getting a translation for the word sit, and then we try to just say, like, you know, like if I'm speaking Japanese, it's like suwari nasai, like sit down, I'm being angry at someone, or it's like suwatte kudasai, which is different, you know, it's like a nicer way of asking someone to have a seat. All right, let's see. So what's poppin'? Yes, may I come in? Yes, you may go. Well, you would just say, come on in. All right. Yes, plant your butt. Yes, you can hear that too. Again, like these are all interesting things you will hear, but you learn the subtle nuances of like plant yourself. Go plant yourself over there. It's like a plant, like you're like planting a plant in the ground. So put your butt. So plant yourself, park yourself over there. And these are all, again, quite casual things that people would use maybe to a friend or children, something like this. All right, could you like this video, please? Yes, please do like the video. Yes, click that like. click that like button. Let's see. Tom says, tell me the difference between should and ought to. Tom, that's also like a longer kind of thing to cover. The online book I recommend is Animal Farm. Yes, that's a good book. Excellent class, says Jose. Fabio, I prefer using Frederick. Yes, so you can learn individual words and phrases, but also it's connecting situations. So watching what natives do and then listening to what they say. So I could be describing someone, or I'm in the situation, I'm doing something. And even right now, as I speak, so if I'm hesitating for a moment, what do? And I say maybe I try not to use filler words like that, but it's okay. It's not a big problem to do that, especially if you don't have a script. But you'll notice I'd rather just pause and think. The only reason I try to say something is because some people listen to these videos like while they drive or something like that, and if there's no audio for a while, then people might think there's something wrong. So I like to have some audio continuously going. All right. Let's see. John says, how can someone overcome fear of speaking or lack of confidence? So good question, John. It depends on the reason for the lack of confidence. There are basically two things, kind of two categories of things. One of them is that you just don't know the language very well. So you're thinking about words and phrases and grammar and vocabulary and pronunciation, and all of these things are going on in your head, and that's what causes you to lack confidence. And this is why I tell people that you don't get fluent by just repeating things or speaking to yourself or even speaking to other people. You get fluent by really knowing the language well. So imagine if you had to give a speech, even if it's just a speech in front of your friends, and you have two topics. The first topic is you need to talk about something you know very well and you love it. It's like a passion for you or your hobby or something like that. So whatever that is. And then the other thing is you need to talk about something that you don't know anything about, even in your native language if you had to do this. Of course, it will be much easier for the first topic and it will be more difficult for the second because you don't have confidence about that topic. So that's the first reason. The second reason is because you might just have, it's really a psychology issue where you're worried about being judged by other people, or you're maybe not, you don't feel like your ability to say something or communicate perfectly or whatever. But it's typically those reasons. But learning English as a first language really solves all of those problems. Because when you learn English as a first language, you understand the language well, and so you feel confident about using what you learn. Okay? So if I'm learning this, and I'm learning all these different things, when I get into a conversation, the person who learns English as a second language is worried, what if I forget my vocabulary? And then they forget the vocabulary. But here, I've just given you a whole bunch of different ways to even talk about sitting down. And so you will likely remember one of those, and when your friend comes over and you just say, oh, please sit down, have a seat, or whatever. And these things will naturally come out because you've experienced them over and over again. And so I really try to make this very important so people will remember it. But the point is that you don't become fluent by just trying to memorize more vocabulary. You get fluent by really learning and knowing that vocabulary well. And that comes from getting the review of the vocabulary. It's how well you know the language that lets you speak. It's not how much of the vocabulary you know. So I could take two people, one is a person who knows 1,000 words and they can't speak very well, and the other is my own child who doesn't know as many words, but they can speak more fluently. So the fluency doesn't come from the amount of words that you know. It comes from how well you speak. Okay. So hopefully this makes sense. Let me go back, check a few more comments over here. What's the best read or listen audio? Well, it's not like one is better than the other. You should be getting both. You need to get a mix of different media from reading, writing, listening, and even, being able to say things as you feel comfortable with them. But the more input you get, and so even that, like, if you imagine this is how you're learning something, you might like read, write, watch, listen, or even teach something to somebody else. But there are different ways you could do that. Like for reading, I could read an online article, I could read a newspaper, I could read a book, or I could watch a movie, I could watch a clip about something, I can watch a live thing, watch the news. So there are many different ways. Like you see like the connections for this, it's the same idea. So we have one situation, whatever that is, and there are lots of situations, but many different ways of expressing yourself. And so when you learn, there's like one connection here. There's the native language, and then there's the English. And so you're taking vocabulary from here and then vocabulary over here, and then trying to translate it. And if you lose this connection, if you forget the word, or if you just can't think of it or whatever, then you're stuck. And in the conversation, then the conversation stops. But here, like if you forget one of these, it doesn't matter. You just move to the next one. So right now, when I'm speaking, you don't notice me making mistakes. But I'm not really making mistakes. I'm more changing the way I want to say something. So if I want to say like I did do something, but I accidentally say the word don't, then I have to reorganize the sentence in my head to say the opposite. So as an example, yesterday, let's say like the real sentence is, or the idea, the situation I want to express is, like I went to the park yesterday. So the situation is I went to the park. I went to the park. But let's say I'm telling a story or I'm explaining something right now and I accidentally say I didn't. So if I start speaking, like I want to say this. This is the idea, the situation. So I'm telling you what happened yesterday. I went to the park. But let's say I start speaking and just accidentally use the wrong word, like didn't. So I wanted to say I did do something, but let's say I just accidentally say this word again. Now, a non-native speaker at this point would like freeze. Oh no, I said the wrong word. But me, I just reorganize the sentence and say I didn't stay home. I went to the park. So I can keep talking and it looks like that was what I wanted to say, but it's not what I wanted to say. All right? But it still expresses the same idea. So the situation is I went to the park. See right there, I made a mistake in what I wanted to say. So I looked at the word and was like, I went to the park. Okay? So natives can still use the wrong word or think about something, and the fluency comes where you're able to fix sentences or change them and still say what you want to say, but it's just using different words. And when you learn like this, you always have something to say. So that's why I always have something to say. So I don't sit here, or I guess I'm standing here, and think like, well, I don't know what to say next. You never seen me do that. And I've spoken for like hours and hours in these videos. But it's just because I can think about something like the train is moving. Oh, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't want to say I didn't. I want to say I did do something. But instead of stopping the conversation or stopping my sentence, I just change it, reorganize it on the fly. Okay? It's another good expression for you. I'll put that up here too. On the fly. And see if you can understand what that means. So right now I'm doing something and I made a mistake, but on the fly, I change it. So in that moment, I'm able to do something different on the fly. So right now, right while I'm able to do something. So I went to the park. That's what happened yesterday. And today I'm telling you about that. But I say I didn't, and in my mind, I'm like, oh no, I didn't want to say that. I wanted to say I did something. All right. So I changed the sentence, and instead of saying like I did, so I wanted to say I did something fun, So if I want to introduce it like that. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I did something fun yesterday, but I accidentally say the word didn't. So now I can't use this anymore because I like used the wrong thing. So I change the sentence on the fly as I'm speaking. And so I say, I didn't stay home. That's the opposite thing. So I didn't stay home. And this is, again, I'm just taking a sentence like this. I'm moving the track. I'm laying the track as I move. I don't stop the train and get out and think about that. So I didn't stay home. I went to the park. I didn't stay home. I went to the park. So you notice, like, I came back to the thing I wanted to say, but I didn't stop myself and think, what do I do? I used the wrong word. So I don't freeze in conversations because I always have something to say. Okay? Remember that non-native speakers are usually learning like 1 or 2 ways to say something, but there really are lots of ways to say things. There's really an infinite number of ways to say something. I could probably think of maybe like 100 ways to tell someone to sit down. And it would be using slightly different, vocabulary or grammar or whatever, but I could do that just because I've just had the practice of seeing all this again and again. Okay? Hopefully this makes sense. I want to give examples of how I'm speaking as I'm speaking. So while I'm speaking, just so you can see what's happening in my mind as I'm doing this. So even if I make a mistake, it doesn't look like one. You don't notice it because I just changed it on the fly. So while I'm speaking, like I'm in this video, I'm talking about something and I can easily change to something else. And as you become more fluent, you can notice other people doing this too. So you can see them, like if you notice my eyes, you could go back and probably watch the video like, oh, look at that. Like on the fly, he made a mistake or something like that, but easily changed and was able to keep speaking. So that's, a lot of this, the videos is trying to give you examples of what fluent speech looks like. So that when you're in a conversation, okay, if you forget one word, that's fine. Use something else. Explain it in a different way. Keep laying the track. And as you get better at doing these 2 things, your fluency will improve. And so the fastest way to do this is like you keep learning as a first language and you keep learning more situations and seeing how natives are talking about certain things. What do they say? What do I say when I'm holding a marker? I'm holding a marker. I have a marker in my hand. There is a marker in my hand. I could express this very basic idea. Look, it's a marker and it's in my hand. I could say it's on my hand. It's still on my hand right here. Oh, now it's in my hand. It's in my hand. Now it's on my head. And so when you're teaching people, like natives who are teaching their children, they're just doing this naturally. They're connecting the situation with the vocabulary. That's all they're doing. All right. Let me go back here. I wanted to make sure this is very clear and show you again, I'm laying track as I'm speaking. So I'm not thinking about it first, waiting a minute, and then speaking. I'm laying the track as I speak. So I'm thinking about what I want to say as I do it, but it's just kind of like a natural thing. All right, Tom says, Fabio, I'd rather prefer using Frederick. Yes, so if you enjoy using that app, also leave us a review. Go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and leave us a review. All right, let's see. Kokoni Swarane. All right, click the like button. Yes, Bradley says, thanks a lot, Mr. Badger, for your significant help. It's my pleasure. All right, Teacher Drew speaks at a good pace. I can understand most of the words he says. You would say most of the words he says. All right, Bunny, is that Bunny? Bonnie? Nice to be here. Nice to see you there. Toki says, would you explain what Frederick has? It is pronouncing words only or more. Thanks. So basically what Frederick does, I'll give you a quick explanation of that. I just actually told people about it yesterday because we released a new update, a new feature for the app. It's actually a very simple feature, but I call it a quality of life improvement, where it just makes it a lot easier to use. But the basic idea of Frederick is that rather than learning vocabulary or pronunciation in a random way, where often like you can go on YouTube, so right here on YouTube you will find 10 phrases in English or 10 interesting words or something like that. But it's a bunch of random expressions that don't really help you pronounce things or understand kind of systematically how the language works. And so what we're doing when we're teaching children vocabulary or teaching children pronunciation, especially teaching them to read, we begin with basic things like the alphabet, and then we start with actual reading sounds. So we have like the short vowel sounds. And the way to learn these is not by just getting like random pronunciations. It's by learning them systematically by comparing these different pronunciations. Okay? So as an example, I've got an, in, on, and un. So I'm able to compare these, and that's what you can do in the app. So you can actually look at all these different combinations of letters and see what happens. It's the same thing I'm talking about here. So the situation is this letter combination, and then the sound is what? So just like you changing like the movement of your mouth or the shape of your mouth, like ow, ow. So I'm still making the same sound, but I'm changing the shape of my mouth, which changes the sound. So I'm still just it's still the same sound, but I'm changing the shape of my mouth, and you can hear and learn the pronunciation that way by comparing these different sounds. So as I begin with these, an, in, on, un, and I'm learning them like a native speaker because you're just getting to compare them rather than learn through the IPA or get a translation like Japanese kids are learning these things. It's like they would hear it's like oh no, like you don't want to learn that pronunciation. You want to learn it all in English. In English. So this combination of letters makes what sound? And once you learn this, now you can start putting more letters on there and understand how that changes. So now we have a k, a, n, can. And then we put an E on the end of that and we get k, a, n, cane, cane. And so you learn all of these things, and now we can learn a longer word like hurricane, hurricane, hurricane. Okay? So the point of Frederick is to help you learn pronunciation, listening, vocabulary, grammar, but all of those things as a first language. So we want to do the same thing that you would be doing like in a university, like if you had a person who was specifically doing like pronunciation with you or whatever, you would just repeat after them after saying certain words. So the teacher would say hat, and then you would try to repeat after that person. So you can do that in the app as well, but the important thing is you can actually compare and make the words and sounds yourself to see how they work. And then you go up through the levels systematically to learn over 2,000 words, which teaches you how to pronounce, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of words, really. I mean, really, like all the words in the English language. 84% of those are covered by phonics, and you will still learn like the kind of rules that we teach in the app. You will know how to pronounce most things by going through the app. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if it does not, though. Let's see. Okay, Frederick is amazing. You ought to try it. Yes, and so you can certainly try the app. Just get it for free, install it, and it's only like $20 if you want the whole thing. So hey, Drew, just wanted to say konnichiwa. Glad to see you here. Nice to see you there. Thanks. I assume so, but it's a bit costly for my pocket, so I wish to know more before purchase. Yes, and so again, it's like for what you get, if you were to go to regular pronunciation training or get someone to actually help you with that, that would cost you hundreds of dollars easily. But I've made we've spent like over, probably over like, $250,000 building the app. And then you get it for $20. And so, yes, it's very, very cheap for what you get. Let's see, Arlene from the Philippines, nice to see you there. Tom, great, you should say before purchasing, but Teacher Drew will probably talk more about Frederick. Yes, a great app to learn English. Hope you enjoy it. But thank you for the recommendation. We have the same idea on the fly in Portuguese. We say vo or vu, I guess. Yeah. I'm sure, and a lot of these things, like you will recognize that, and because people are thinking the same way in a lot of situations. It's just different vocabulary. That's it. All right, Lala says, I like almost your learning methods and your idea about less speak and more understand through situations. But to be honest, I had stuttering a lot because lack. Oh, you mean lack of speaking? Yes. Well, I mean, you have to think about why you're stuttering exactly. Is it because you don't know the vocabulary well, or you actually have a problem? Like, do you stutter in your native language as well? If you do, then that's not an English problem. But if you don't stutter when you speak your native language, then it means you just don't know English as well as you should to communicate. So yes, you can take the pressure off of yourself. Please relax, just get lots of understandable messages and naturally varied review. It's really that simple. So as you learn more like a native speaker, you will start speaking more like one. So you will start recognizing, oh, look, in this situation, people say this. If I drop something on my foot, I say, ouch. Okay, very simple. And so the same thing, if I do this in Japanese, I notice what Japanese people say in certain situations, and I just say the same thing. So I've learned, $20 is fantastic. I thought it's $300. What? $300? No. So the way the app works is if you install the app and you get it and you actually pay for the whole thing within 30 minutes, it's just $20. But if you wait and you want to pay for the whole thing at regular price, it's about $80. But it's still, even at $80, and people often will pay that just because it's worth it, because you can get so much out of the app and it will improve you so much for just for how cheap it is. But yeah, it's really cheap. All right, hey, hope I'm not late. And remember, you can watch these videos later, so you don't have to. Is on the fly a baseball expression? I suppose it could be. I mean, it could be from any kind of sport, really. So while something is moving, I can catch something on the fly. And you can think about it just means doing it while you're moving. So on the fly while I'm moving, rather than I stop and think about something. So I do something on the fly. That person can think on the fly. He can think quickly. You also hear people talking about thinking on their feet. So instead of sitting down and relaxing, I can think on my feet. So I'm standing up. I like to move around, stand while I'm speaking. I can think on my feet. Miguel says, can you explain the usage of apostrophe when talking about possession? Well, that's you can just Google that. Really, I mean, that it's just it's just the, it'd be much better just to Google that rather than. The thing I'm best for in these videos is explaining something that you don't logically understand. But just learning the rules for apostrophe is apostrophe S or whatever. Or if it goes after, if you have a group, something like that. But you can just learn the rules of that. And especially something like apostrophe, you have time when you're writing, so you don't have to think about using apostrophe on the fly. It's just while you're writing. Let's see. Can anybody tell me the name of the app to download it? Yes, if you're talking about Frederick, just click on the link in the description below this video. It's right down there, and you can get it there. So it's focused on improving pronunciation. Am I getting it right? Yes, but it's not just pronunciation. When you're learning like a native, you learn pronunciation, you learn vocabulary, you learn grammar, you learn all these things together. So it will improve your listening and it will improve your fluency as well. All right, Aaron says, I think learning IPA is the best and most straightforward way of pronunciation is your ultimate goal. Yeah, see, I would disagree with that because natives don't know the IPA. And so you don't, the way I try to explain things to people is, this is you, let's just imagine this is you here, and this is the language you want to learn. Go directly to that language. Don't put anything between you and the language. So trying to learn pronunciation, it's why would I learn the IPA first and then go to trying to learn English pronunciation? The only reason to learn IPA is really if you're a linguist and you're trying to pronounce a bunch of different languages, but you still need to do some translating in your head as you learn IPA. So IPA will tell you how to pronounce things, but it's not necessary, and native English speakers don't do that because they go directly to the language. Now, this works not just for pronunciation, but notice it's also for grammar, learning vocabulary, real situations, seeing how people actually communicate. So if I learn only slow English from an English teacher, then of course the real English is going to be more difficult. So it's the same idea. So you want to go directly to the language and learn that as fast as possible, rather than trying to learn something else first. So I'm not telling people like learning the IPA won't hurt you. I don't think it would, but it's just not necessary, and it will just give you more to do when you could just go directly to the language and learn it the same way natives do. So no one had a system like Frederick before I made that, and I made that because I wanted a system that anybody can use. So native English speakers are also using Frederick. Even like little kids in America or Canada are using the app to improve their own reading and writing and listening and all of their skills as well. So it's one system anybody can use. Let's see. Hi, teacher from Indonesia, Phil Walain, if I got that correctly. I'm trying to learn English as a first language. So you would say, I'm trying to learn English as a first language. But even if I learn words in English, my mind still try to connect to my native English unconsciously. Does this happen to you? It depends on how you're doing it. Like when you say learning English as a first language, like you're looking at like a situation, or you're just getting some English vocabulary? Because if you learn through a situation, like you see something happen and then you understand the vocabulary without someone giving you a definition or a translation, then the vocabulary should be easier to remember. But the two steps of learning the vocabulary, first you have to understand it, and then you get review of that vocabulary. So if you understand something, maybe logically, like, okay, I understand native should say this, but I'm still thinking in my native language, it means you need to get more review with that vocabulary. So I would get different vocabulary, like different sentences that have that same vocabulary in it, or you're hearing different people talking about that. These are the kinds of things we do in Fluent for Life, because the point of the program is to work you through that understanding and review process. So we don't want to just teach you one word one day and then you don't see it again. You should see the vocabulary and the grammar, things like that, again and again. And so even as you finish one lesson set and you move on to the next one, you will get more examples of those things in different ways. So all of these different things are working together to get you fluent. All right, Maria says, thank you. Okay, Keiko says, hello, teacher. I haven't watched your live stream in a long time because I'm off today. Yes, bon yasumi desho. But welcome. Toki again says, I noticed that pronunciation of a word can be different depending on the words before or after it. Do you agree? Yes, it's the same thing with letters. So what you find in Frederick is also sentences. And typically the way sentences work, like even the pronunciation for a native English speaker, like we have even some examples in this chat, people say, sup, sup. So I might take something like what is up and shorten that into sup. And so the words change, pronunciation can change. And again, like Frederick is one piece of learning English like a native, but it's a very big part of that because natives are doing the same thing. So if you do more what natives are doing, you will get fluent faster the same way natives get fluent. So that's why like the things I do now to learn Japanese, I've got my ears open all the time. What are people saying to each other? How are they talking to each other? What are they talking about? What words are they using in those expressions? And that's how I learn. Let's see, Eunice says, is it okay to say pennies? Cents, so one out of 100 of $1, doesn't it sound awkward? Pennies? Sorry for this question. Yeah, people use that. You can use the word pennies, that's fine. And again, when people have questions like, is it okay to say something? You can either Google that just to see if natives are using that, if you see English examples of that, or if you listen to what natives are saying. So if people are talking about money, yeah, I hear the word pennies. That's common, sure. D. Pelly says, about reductions in casual speaking, do you reduce the TH sound to a true D or a true T sound? It depends. And again, native speakers don't have specific rules about this, and that's why each person will sound a little bit different. So an English teacher will tell you, they will try to give you a rule because students want rules. But you don't, again, like a rule is like trying to get one example of something, when native speakers are actually getting many, many, many examples of things. So just like this, if I just say, oh yes, like the TH always has this sound, but then you will hear it from other people differently. And so native speakers, they know, they hear all these different examples of a sound, and then they understand how to say it because of that. All right? So that's how it works. How can I learn phrasal verbs? Well, we have a whole phrasal verb program. You can just Google or just right here on YouTube, actually just search for a visual guide to phrasal verbs, and we show you how to do that. It's also in Fluent for Life. Let's see. Hi, Drew, says Gennady. And everyone here, I am Gennady. Let's see. From Java, and this is my first time joining this live chat. I'm super glad being here with you all. Glad to hear it. And Mulatu, hello, sir. I want to learn your class. How can I follow you regularly? Well, you can just watch our videos here, or you can join Fluent for Life and get Frederick as well. So that's in the link, or the links in the description below this video, if you'd like to do that. So most of the things I do in these YouTube videos is kind of explaining about how people should be learning. And I also teach some vocabulary, just like we talked about different ways of sitting down, or other random vocabulary like on the fly, but you're learning it contextually, so you learn it the same way natives do. But if you're looking for a full program that actually leads you step by step to get you fluent automatically, even if you don't have anyone to speak with, that's what we do in Fluent for Life. Let's see. How can I increase my vocabulary? Well, the part of increasing one's vocabulary is again, learning this way. But I really want to remind people, if you're not already fluent in your current vocabulary, don't try to make it bigger. So people always want to learn more words, but they can't use the vocabulary they already have. So if you can speak fluently, you already have a good vocabulary, then you should be learning more. But if you can't speak fluently, then focus on the vocabulary you already know. And this is why I tell people you don't need to learn more vocabulary to become fluent. You can take the vocabulary you already know and get better at using that. All right? It's not always like the new thing. You have to protect yourself from the natural desire to look for new stuff all the time. So YouTube will keep you in a trap of looking for new information all the time. You find something new, you learn it, you forget it. You find something new, you learn it, you forget it, and you go through this cycle, and it's really frustrating. And that's why I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos about learning Japanese on YouTube. Because I know it's just going to teach me a bunch of random stuff. So I might find a particular video about a topic I'm interested in, I need to know about something and I want to learn about that. But most of the time I'm just watching content. It could be in Japanese, but it's about something, whatever that topic is. Anaran says, consider presenting us a lecture, half an hour, in the history of Japan. Why would I do that? I've made some videos about Japan on my channel, but people don't really come to my channel for that. And there are also lots of channels that already talk about Japanese stuff. So people already do that. I want to contact you. Please give me the way. Well, you're contacting me right now. If you have a question for us, though, you can send an email to info@EnglishAnyone.com. Mehak says, hi, sir. Could you recommend a book on Latin or Greek roots, prefixes, and suffixes in English? I don't know if you need a book for that. You can just Google that kind of stuff, prefixes and suffixes. You can find lists of them all over the place. Eunice says, I just asked about the word pennies as just one example of many other examples of situations I'm afraid to get when I talk to a native speaker. That's when I can make misunderstandings. Yes, so that's a good example of you needing to pay more attention to what natives are saying. Or you need to have someone like me teach you what natives say in different situations. So either way, you need to get that knowledge. So if you learn something and you wonder, do natives really say this? Then yes, that will make you unconfident in situations. But if you watch what natives are saying, then you know for sure. Like if you any words that I'm saying right now, you know for sure that natives are using that, because I am a native and I am using that. And I'm just using regular vocabulary that most people would use. All right. So if you feel like unsure about vocabulary, really pay attention to where you're learning and who you're learning from. So if you're learning from natives, then the vocabulary should be fine. But if you're learning from textbooks, then you will probably be nervous about that. So in Fluent for Life, we actually take people through real conversations. So you know for sure that natives are using the vocabulary. Let's see. Amazing World. After reaching B2 or maybe C1, I feel like cannot improve my English skill anymore, cannot cram English words, reach to plateau. How can I fix that issue? Yes, so that, like, let me answer. So I'm noticing like there are mistakes in your writing, so that means your English is probably not as good as you think it is, but that's where you need to actually improve the vocabulary you have. I've said this already a few times, but I want to make it very clear, so you can learn more vocabulary. Like I could continue, like this is one word, one. I'm continuing to learn more. But fluency is a different thing than vocabulary. So you can learn more, like I'm continuing to learn more, and you hit what you found here is that plateau in your fluency. So the plateau. So you've improved and you're kind of learning more vocabulary, but you're not moving up in fluency. But natives, when actually natives are taking something like they're actually getting fluent in the vocabulary much faster. So even without knowing a lot of words, you become fluent. And I think, wait, someone else maybe just asked me that question too. How long does it take to fluent like a native? All right, so like to become fluent or to get fluent like a native. So here's the answer to both of those questions. So fluency and vocabulary are two different things. And the reason is because you become fluent in individual words and phrases. So what's really happening is you can become fluent in this word or that word or this word or this word, but these other words, maybe you don't know them very well. Maybe you're still thinking about translations and wondering about what to say in conversations. Or you're worried about grammar or pronunciation or whether natives really use that vocabulary or not. And so as you continue to learn more, you can learn more vocabulary but not become fluent in that vocabulary. So this means you know that information. Maybe a native says something and you can recognize it, but you're not actually using it fluently. You don't feel comfortable using it. But natives, they become fluent as they learn individual words and phrases, and they review them so many times. That's how they become fluent in the vocabulary. So it's not more words. More words don't guarantee fluency. They don't make you fluent. It's only being fluent in vocabulary. All right? And this is by knowing the vocabulary really well. And that's the whole answer to your question. So if you know a lot but you plateaued, it's probably because you're still learning English as a second language rather than learning English as a first language. So native speakers learn English as a first language, and you can become fluent almost instantly in individual words and phrases. So if you learn something, you're like, I get it. You have that aha moment where you feel, I really understand something now. Now I can use it. So when you have that moment, then you become fluent in that vocabulary. You won't forget it in conversations. You will feel confident about using it. But it happens for each individual word and phrase. So that's why you can have, and most people, like they have a vocabulary where, like here's your total vocabulary, and there's a part of your vocabulary that you're fluent in, but the rest of it you are not. because you don't know the vocabulary very well. You haven't reviewed it very well. So again, you can plateau here, like really from the start. So you start learning things, you're getting translations and grammar rules study, all of that. And so even if you have a large passive vocabulary, so you know the vocabulary, but you still can't speak. Okay, it's because you lack fluency. You actually haven't taken more time to review that vocabulary to understand it like a native. So instead of trying to learn it through your native language, you have to learn it as a native would. You have to understand it the same way natives do. Okay? So if you want to become fluent like a native, like have whole conversations like a native, then that means you have to learn individual words and phrases the same way natives do. Okay? So you learn like a native and you get fluent like a native. And the process can be very quick. So in Fluent for Life, we take people through, like each month, you just focus on a set of vocabulary and you get fluent in that. That's what we do. And then you learn another set, and then you learn another set. And as you grow, then you leave this plateau and you actually start speaking. That's how it works. All right, let me know if you have any questions about that specifically, though. All right, and Anne says, hello, sir, from India. Sir, I can understand English even by the native speaker, but unable to speak. Yes, and again, everybody has a different way of expressing this same problem. But everybody has it because everybody's learning English as a second language rather than learning English as a first language. It's really that simple. If you learn it as a second language, so if you think about translations and grammar rules when you learn, then you will think about that when you speak. But like this, the train example over here, I'm not thinking about grammar rules. I'm not thinking about if something is the imperative or some other name for like technical vocabulary or whatever. I just connect the vocabulary with the situation, and that's how I speak. And so you can do the same thing too. No one is born native. I wasn't born native. I had to become native by learning English as a first language. Does this make sense? Hopefully, let me know if this message is getting clear, getting through to people. But that's why I continue to make these videos, because there are like billions of people that have this problem. And so I'm trying to help you and show you, like, stop learning English as a second language, start learning English as a first language, and you will start making a lot more progress. Toki says, exactly as you told in replying to Eunice, I wish to make an app to accelerate, optimize this process. What do you mean? Like trying to make, well, you don't need an app for that. If you want, the reason I made an app for Frederick is because it's teaching you to read and it's teaching you the vocabulary, and the app is a good format for that. But you need actual real examples of people speaking. So like Duolingo or whatever, it's not giving you real examples of people speaking. It might have some real speech, but it's not real people actually communicating. All right. So that's how people you can learn more vocabulary, but you're not getting the review you need with real English. You need to have that. So that's why I didn't make an app like that myself. Like I made Fluent for Life because that's the system you need to get that. All right? You need to get that input. So video works really well for seeing examples of how natives communicate. All right, 2C's, could you tell me where I can find courses only in English grammar? I can speak, I can speak, but I can't write at all. My native language is Ukrainian. I'm 58 years old, thank you. Well, I don't know a course like specifically about, when you say about grammar, what do you mean by that? Like you want to know the names of grammar rules or something? That's not going to help you write. It will just teach you the names of grammar rules. What you need is examples of how natives actually communicate. So that's what we do in Fluent for Life. So you can look for, there's lots of grammar, rules or whatever online. You can get a grammar textbook. Anything will just tell you more about like the actual rules of the language. But if you want to use that fluently, that's what we teach you. All right, and it says Citiline, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. How's it going, Drew? I have a question. Usually kids have a silent period, and after thousands of hours of listening, they are trying to speak. They need to elicit sounds and articulation. I think it's the same with us who are trying to practice English. Are you saying that we don't need to practice? All right, I want to make it clear. That's a good question. Like the silent period. So like Krashen talks about this too, and I really want to make it clear what this means. Let me get a drink of water. I'm losing my voice over here. What time is it? All right, we're all right. All right, let's do this. So let's imagine this is your first English lesson and you are a child and I'm teaching you. Now we begin, this is like hour 0. We're now starting to learn the language. I don't know, I'm using my blue marker so much it's running out. Let me see if the red is working. Yeah, red is okay. So if we begin, I'm teaching a child, like the silent period comes, it's really just how long it takes for you to understand something. And when you feel like you understand something quickly, then you can use it. So like you don't like the silent period, really, it's only as long as the teacher is like good or bad at teaching. So the silent period for most like regular English learners in school is many, many years because like they don't feel confident speaking because they don't really understand what they're learning. Oh, no, pardon me. Again, we got a fire truck as usual. All right. But what I do, like the silent period actually should be very short. I mean, like a few minutes. And that's for each word or phrase that you're teaching. So if I'm sitting with a child and I'm giving them like my kind of Japanese lesson that I've given before many times. So if I'm going to teach you something, I think Tom just like wrote it up there as well. But if I'm trying to teach you Japanese and we can imagine like a silent period, the silent period is really just how long does it take for you to understand what I'm saying? And if I'm a good teacher, I can explain something very well in Japanese or in English or whatever the language is, and you don't need like months and months of quiet time or whatever. Because kids want to speak. People want to express themselves, but they don't feel confident about doing so because they don't really understand what they're saying. So just very quickly, maka, 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 aka, akai, akai maka. Aka, 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 akai maka, kuro, kuroi maka, kuroi maka, ao, aoi maka, 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 kuro, aka, ao. Kuro, kuroi saifu, saifu, kuroi maka, kuroi saifu. Kuroi mouse, kuro. Kuroi maka, kuroi mouse, mouse, mouse. So if I'm giving you a lesson in Japanese like that, how quickly do you need to understand what I'm saying? So most people, they don't understand quickly because I'm just giving you a translation. Aka means red. Kuro means black. Ao means blue. And I'm trying to help you remember that, but I'm actually making it worse. I'm teaching you to think about translations. Yes. So you got it. So this is a black wallet and this is a black marker. You got it. And again, it's like you don't need a quiet period. The point is that you really understand something when I'm saying it to you. And that's the same thing with Frederick. Okay? And same thing like Mohammed just asked the pronunciation between like old wood and wood. Those are the kinds of questions you can ask Frederick and it will just tell you the answer. How do you pronounce this? Like the pronunciation is right in there. That's why I made the app. So even if I'm not there, you can listen to me pronounce over 2,000 words and sentences. Okay? But going back to this example, the whole point of having a quiet period or a silent period, it just means how long does it take for the person to understand what you're saying. And if I spend many, many years teaching you grammar rules and you don't really understand the language, then your silent period is going to last for years. Okay? So again, like the point of learning English as a first language is the silent period should be there, but only like it's my fault if I can't get you fluent because I'm not explaining it as like a first language and not helping you understand that. Now this video and the kinds of stuff that we teach in Fluent for Life, it's because people already have a good level of English. So the people in the program are usually intermediate learners, but they just don't know and they don't have like a high, strong level of fluency. So I can take people from intermediate to fluency because of how well I can teach, because of how well I help you understand the language. That's why like I guarantee what I do because like it's my fault if you get fluent or not. Okay? So yes, like the practice actually comes from you getting review. So if I give you an example, like you probably already forgotten what red, blue, and black are in Japanese, and that's okay. Like I don't expect you to remember that. But tomorrow, if we had a lesson again, and I could go back and review those things, and not just a marker, but like something different, you know, whatever, like a red shirt or a red other thing, whatever. Now Tom has seen like many of these lessons, so he knows what's going on. Yeah. So saifu ne. Yeah. So that's your wallet. All right. But I could do anything. Let's see if I have anything over here. Like I don't really have enough. I don't have anything that's really like Japanese that doesn't have an English like the microphone in front of me. It's like like a microphone or the computer or anything else like that. Like a lot of these things are just like in English or whatever. But please give a short explanation of how to practice the language to get fluency. So the short explanation is you need to understand like a native and get lots of naturally varied review. That's how you get fluent. That's how you get fluent. So you need to hear me or somebody so you understand what something is. So I've just given you an example of learning Japanese as a first language. And then I need to have review time with you where you're hearing me say something and you're hearing other people talk about these markers or other things in different colors, and you will naturally develop fluency because you will understand how it works. Okay? So that's it. You need to understand like a native and you need to review like a native. So is really the opposite of what everybody does in a traditional lesson. So traditional English as a second language lesson is where you're trying to, you want to learn something a little bit, and even if you don't understand it, you try to repeat after the teacher. But repeating the lesson doesn't make you understand something. You have to get more review so you really understand something. Now I can, again, like teaching you something simple like red marker and you understand, okay, this is red and this is marker, and in Japanese like akai maka, aka, akai maka. So you're learning, like an adjective comes before the noun, but I'm not explaining that to you. You're just understanding it naturally the way a child does. So you understand like a native and then you review like a native. So even if I just give you one lesson in Japanese, you will probably forget it. But if you come back again tomorrow, even for a few minutes, I will help you start speaking, and you will understand the language well enough to start using it confidently. That's how it works. So you don't get fluent by trying to repeat or talk with other people. You get fluent by understanding. Then you speak. When you feel confident about using the language, that's when you speak. That's when you feel good about speaking. If you don't feel good, then you will be in a conversation and you will just feel nervous about speaking. Okay? So that's how you do it. All right. Let's see. So Tom says, I don't like Duolingo at all. All right. Let's see. Orson says, do we have a free trial of your program? Actually, you can go on YouTube and see different samples of lessons from Fluent for Life. So the program was originally called Master English Conversation before I put all the lessons together as one program. Let's see, the Portal Deep Gate. What about music to learn English? Yeah, music is certainly fine. You can listen to music. That's another good way to learn. Max says, greetings, teacher. I am preparing myself in order to apply for customer service, or yes, for customer service jobs in English. Do you have any advice? I think I gave this advice in the previous live video. But you should try to find people who are actually hiring and then like talk with them personally about how you can, what kind of value you can provide to the company. Ryan says, thank you for enriching our view of how to learn more English. Tom says, yep. Orson said, do we? Okay, I answered that already. All right, what's my mother tongue? You're asking me? So my native language is English. Melissa. But also I want to make it clear that I could be, like, I'm becoming native in Japanese as well. So it just means I'm learning like a native rather than learning through English. That's how I get fluent in Japanese. And and the fluent process, the fluency, getting fluent process, it's continuing all day, every day as I learn more. And again, that's because I get fluent in individual words and phrases. So I will hear maybe some new vocabulary and think, oh, that's interesting. But maybe I don't hear it again and I forget it. Or I don't get to review it, or I don't really understand it perfectly, so I never use it fluently. So I have to work at that. I have to get like lots more review of those things because I don't have a teacher to teach me Japanese. I have to do it myself. Melissa says, what did you mean no vocabulary really good? I mean really well. I know the words and I recognize them, but it's the kind of passive storage. How do I learn to extract them? Melissa, watch the video I have about like the 3 levels of understanding. So that I made a whole video just talking about that specifically. The basic idea is that you begin with exposure to the language. So I just gave an example of that right now. So maybe a friend of mine, a Japanese friend, uses some vocabulary, and maybe I don't quite understand what it is, or I don't yet feel confident using it, but I'm exposed to the language. Now it's in my brain at a very low level. But maybe the next highest level where I have awareness of it, now I can recognize it when other people are using that. But I still don't feel very confident about using it myself. But once I get to the ownership level, that's where I have fluency in that vocabulary because I know it so well, I can use it, I recognize the patterns of the vocabulary or pronunciation or grammar or whatever, and then I can use it fluently. And to get from the awareness level to the ownership level, that's where you have to get a lot more review and spend more time with the language until you get that aha moment where you really understand something. Okay. So I'd like to know if it's a good idea to learn English by vocabulary level. Well, again, it doesn't matter like what vocabulary you're learning, but how you learn the vocabulary is what's important. So I could learn any kind of vocabulary, but if I don't actually understand the vocabulary, I can't use it fluently. So like, I wouldn't worry about specific vocabulary. I mean, often, like if you're looking at different levels, like A1, A2 or whatever, lots of people still make basic mistakes even at the lowest level of that, but they're still trying to learn more new vocabulary. So they're making like the really big mistake that language learners make, and that's learning more vocabulary when they're not already fluent in their current vocabulary. So you really should be taking more time. I promise you, if you actually spent more time reviewing what you already know, and naturally varied review is what gets you fluent in that way, then you would become fluent in that vocabulary. That's how it works. So don't worry about getting to new stuff. And Tom again with the Keshigomu. Are we getting benefits of Japanese? Well, yeah, there you go. The benefit of me giving you the lesson in Japanese is I don't think many Japanese people are watching this video. I live in Japan, but I'm not like really popular in Japan. Or I guess I wouldn't say I'm not popular, but I'm not well known in Japan. And so I can use Japanese examples because most people will not understand that. But the point is to teach you something in a language and help you understand that in the language rather than you thinking about like translations or something. So I'm trying to remind you or show you what it's like to learn as a child again. And then you think, oh, wow, look at that. I learned something without using my native language. And that means you learned it as a native speaker. You learned it as a first language. All right, let's see. Wow, what a helpful approach, says Eunice. Glad to hear it. Raphael, Frederick, email update. I made a typo. Frederick, update email. I made a typo up there. Okay. Thanks for answering my question. Yes, my pleasure. Ms. David, I've just learned the grammar of conditionals. I find it very hard to apply to my speech. What would you recommend to use it in order to use them fluently? Stop thinking about conditionals. So native speakers don't know what a conditional is. The only thing they know is like what the word condition means. It's like, well, I guess if you do this, then you do that thing over here. But non-native speakers are like, well, there's a first conditional and a zero conditional, and they're trying to think about all these different grammar points rather than thinking about just like when you would do something. So natives think about situations and then what vocabulary we use in that situation. That's what natives are doing. So a native will think, okay, I have like if I had something, like if it's raining, I will bring an umbrella. So if it's raining, I will bring an umbrella. And then you get lots of examples of people or like those kind of basic conditionals where it's like if something happens, then this other thing happens over here. So you don't try to study all of the conditionals. You just pick one situation and get lots of examples of that thing. My comment. But post your comment again, Raphael. I got too many. Sorry about that. Okay. What do you think about learning English through pictures? Yes, you should learn English through any medium you can that helps you understand the language. And this is why like people will say you should learn with your ears or something. Why? Native speakers don't only learn with their ears, they learn with everything. It's like if I tried to tell you what an orange is or try to describe the flavor of an orange, it's much easier to just let you try the orange and you experience it directly. So I gave the example before about going directly to the language. You don't want to put steps in between you and the real language. You want to get to the real language. Learn directly. Understand it by direct experience. Okay. Yeah, so Raphael, post that comment again. Let's see. Cam says, I'm from Thailand. Nice to see you there. All right, Eunice says, I think natives have also little knowledge of grammar. Yes, so they understand what grammar is, like they're using the language correctly because they have like Krashen calls this a sense of correctness. I would call it the same thing. They speak without thinking about grammar. However, they do think about grammar in academic or professional situations. Yes, and so you want to know if you're using something correctly, but they probably will not know the name of a grammar point or something. They're not thinking like, what's the first conditional versus a zero conditional or whatever. They're just thinking like, okay, in this situation, what words do we use? So I'm trying to get you to think more like a native speaker. All right, and if we have Cideline again, thanks for responding. I agree with you about almost everything, but point of contention is speaking practice. For example, kids who reach a point where they start to speak after a silent period and period when they start understanding messages. They make a lot of mistakes in grammar pronunciation, but with practice, they're getting better. Recently, I lost my speaking dude. What is my speaking dude? Or is that a typo? And I noticed how my ability to speak became worse than before. You mean like a speaking partner? Speaking dude. So when I had this practice. Yes, so you can like, I'm not saying don't practice speaking. The goal is to get to having conversations with people. So that like we want to go to the same place. But I'm suggesting that like most of the practice comes from getting all of the varied input rather than like studying more rules and grammar. So once you start feeling confident, then you can start using it. But like you should feel quite confident about something, usually much more confident than than you would be in a typical English class. So you should really learn something and understand it and think like, I really got it. And then after that, there's like a little bit of practice you get, maybe pronouncing something correctly or just feeling comfortable having the words come out of your mouth or something like that. But you should be spending, I would say you'll get most of your improvement. If we look at my like iceberg example, so here's the iceberg floating in water. So the tip of the iceberg is up here. This is the speaking part, and the understanding part is down here. So if you can understand, like this, the practice comes from getting lots of different and varied examples. Okay, this is the naturally varied review. So that's why I said there are two parts to understanding this. The first is just understanding it like a native, and then the second part is getting lots of review. So if you hear 100 different examples of how to say something, you're going to feel very confident about using it yourself. And then when you're in a conversation, it should come out naturally. Okay? All right. And I think that answers that. All right. So speak fluent equals being addicted to the language. Yeah, I don't feel addicted to Japanese. I'm just trying to learn it like a native speaker rather than a student. All right. Hello, Drew from Nigeria. Talking a lot in English. Yep, says Tom. And let's see, how do you pronounce that? Hugh. Sometimes I do think in English when I'm speaking, but somehow when I focus on that, like when the heck do I think in English, then I start translating. Yeah, you gotta like don't. That's why if you spend a lot of time just reviewing the language, and somebody just asks, I think, how to do it without being bored, that's the whole point of naturally varied review. So I'm not saying like repeat something again and again and again. Don't do that. All right. Like the point is like that you really feel confident because you got lots of varied examples. So you don't take just like the one example and repeat it because that example doesn't help you understand anymore. But if you get lots of different examples of different people and different time periods, so you get different tenses, like all those differences about those examples, that's what gets you fluent because you understand the language so well. And then, you can actually go into the conversation and with very little speaking practice, you would be feeling very confident about something. And you know this because like you can learn a new word or a new phrase without practicing it at all and then just use it in a conversation. Okay? So what happens with like young kids when they're learning a language, just to go a little bit deeper into this, is they're still learning the like all of the various rules and patterns of the language. And so they think they're using something correctly when there's like an irregular verb or something. But that's not really a speaking mistake. It just means they didn't learn the rule about that. So if I tell a child, like they're learning some different verbs in English and they learn walk, and they learn play, and then they learn, let's see, what's another, we'll just do this, and then go. So when a child learns the pattern, it's like, if you're talking about something you did before, we put an ED on the end of that. And now you get walked. You put an ED on the end of that, and you get played. And then they get an ED on the end of that, and it's like goed. Okay? So this is where like we think a child is making a mistake. It's not a mistake. They just didn't learn that rule. So some rules you learn as you're in the conversation and you're making that. I mean, there are like maybe you just forget a word, you don't hear it often enough, but like it is possible to teach these things and prepare people for them or prepare people to use these before they get into the conversation. So that's the whole point of Fluent for Life or the way I teach. Is if I can make you understand all these things, but in a natural way, and then we can review them again and again in different ways, then you will be prepared to use them correctly in conversations. And then you won't feel nervous about speaking. All right? So this is not like a typical mistake. It's just like a variation on the rule. And it's like, all right, we have an irregular verb, but a child should not feel bad about that. It's like if I say something and then even in Japanese, I use something and people are like, in this situation, you don't use that. So now you get like ever more fine rules about how language works. Okay? But you didn't make a mistake. You're just learning like a subtler rule about something. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Lewis says, why is a fried potato called French fry? I don't know. I think it's from like the French cut. I think it's like the thin, like long, thin, like that kind of cut for the way you cut the potato. So there are different kinds of, like you get like waffle cut or French cut or julienne or other things like that. I'm not an expert on cooking or even cutting potatoes, but you can look up where something like that comes from. So again, how to do this without being bored is like, it's amazing. So I made a whole video about making espresso in English, just to show one example of naturally varied review. So if you're watching something, if you have an interest in it, you will watch or read or listen to all of that different information. Like people who like comic books, they read lots of different comic books. You don't need to tell that person like to keep reading it. They probably would not read the same comic book again and again, but they would read lots of different ones. And they're all pretty similar. It's like romance novels. It's like all the same story, but the characters are a little bit different or the setting is a little bit different, but people like reading the story. So that's naturally varied review. So it's a little bit of the same thing with a little bit of something new. And that keeps your brain interested so you understand things well, and that builds your fluency automatically. All right. Aaron says, translating is kind of a hindrance. Yes, it's more than a hindrance. It stops you from speaking. It's a pain in the ass, yeah. Yes, it's exciting. And Eunice says it exactly, yes, acquisition before practice. So the practice is the acquisition. It's like two different things. So people think there's like a learning phase and then a practice phase. But language acquisition doesn't work like learning to play the piano, all right? I think I've spoken about this before. I don't know, maybe it's been a while. I can very quickly touch on this again. But if I'm trying to learn, let's say I want to learn to just like a motion like this, like taking a cap off of a marker. There's a specific way I can do this. And if I have to practice it in a certain way, like tying my shoes or something more complicated like playing the piano, I'm really trying to take like a song and then use it, like practice it like again and again and again, because I have to move my fingers the same way at the same time each time I play the song. But in a conversation, when you're speaking, each conversation is different. It's like trying to play the piano, but it's a new song each time you play. All right? And so when you're trying to practice something, like the learning is the practice. And then you start speaking whenever you feel comfortable. That's really how it works. So the opposite is like to continue just studying more, but you never feel very confident and fluent about what you're learning. Here's my comment again, says Rava. Did you post it somewhere? Sahimon, can you recommend me another podcast apart from podcasts you got on your YouTube channel? Greetings from Panama. My English is a mess yet. Sorry for my writing. No, you're great. Again, like I don't recommend people watch or even listen to like English learning stuff. Think about something you're interested in and then do that in English. That's all you have to do. All right. I just made it easy to do that with like a whole program that teaches you the language and helps you learn about things like for specific topics. But you could do the same thing by yourself. It's possible to do. It's just harder and it just takes more time. But it certainly is possible. But rather than trying to watch more English learning content, you should be just looking for things you're interested in, like the espresso video I made. So if I want to learn how to make espresso and I want to be able to talk about that, then I should watch a bunch of people making espresso and I will start learning the vocabulary for that. I will learn it quickly and I will become fluent in that as I learn. That's how you do it. So don't look for more English, learning content or whatever. Like if you can understand me, but you can't speak fluently, either join Fluent for Life or just start learning that same way by yourself with more content. But like just look for stuff for natives. And if you're not feeling very confident, it's hard to understand, then do something easier. Like maybe watch a child or a kid make coffee or do something like that. But you can find stuff for all levels like that if you want to. And then Keiko says, but I'm scared because I'll get it wrong. Yes, and so if you don't feel confident, then of course you don't have confidence. You don't really, you're worried you're going to say something incorrectly. But if I see 10 different natives say something, I'm going to be pretty confident I could say that same thing too. Because, okay, in this situation, that's what people say. So I know I'm going to say it correctly. Maddie says, morning, Coach Drew. Overall, you mean deliberate practice is key? No, I mean understanding like a native is key. And practicing like a native, if you think about how natives learn the language, they're getting all these different examples from different people. And you can do the same thing. So it's just learning it systematically. So it's actually learning better than a native would learn the language, because some people, they learn something and they don't hear that vocabulary again. And a lot of people are, especially children, either they have a good teacher or someone that can explain things to them, or they do not, and they have to try to learn things on their own. But you can certainly get that information and continue to learn. Let's see. Hello from Jamaica, says Raimundo. Hello, I would like to know which days of the week you are live streaming. Typically Mondays and Thursdays Japanese time. But next Monday I will not be here, I think. 100 ways to say, oh my, says Keiko. Yes. So if you're prepared, but in Japanese it's the same thing. So I could say, like, I could express something in many different ways. And then I can just say whatever I'm comfortable with and keep the conversation moving. Actually, I've learned much from using language translators and sentence structures. Yeah, so if you feel fluent, then great. Most people are not getting fluent using that. But typically people are learning, if you have to think about grammar rules in a conversation, unless you're just very quick mentally and you know it very well, then you're probably not going to be able to communicate very fluently. Tom says, associating things. Yes, that's connected to that. Zakiyama says, how can I measure my English level? Is it effective to take some English exams like TOEFL? Well, I mean, what do you need English for? Why are you learning English? If you just needed to communicate with people, then that's your level. Can you speak with people or not? And that's, again, like the real thing. You might be able to take an English test, but how are you in real conversations? That's the real test. All right, injured. Oh no, someone is injured over here. Do you see that learning language with grammar rules at the beginning good method? Because I did it with English and I think it works. So do you see that learning language with grammar rules at the beginning good method? Because I did it with English and I think it works. But there are grammar errors in your writing. So if you think using grammar rules is helpful, and again, like, you should be learning grammar. The point is, do you understand the grammar or the rules, or it's really just language patterns? Do you understand them like a native, or are you trying to think about them like a student? And if you still have mistakes in your writing, it's probably because you didn't really understand it like a native. So when you understand it like a native, you won't make those mistakes. All right, Peter again says hello from Vietnam. Yes, kids do make mistakes in any language, but mistakes are part of the learning process. It's okay to make mistakes. And Mr. Dillip says, watching Hollywood movies actually improves our English. I think it's a very lengthy process to learn. Can you please say other ways to learn? Well, again, I actually don't recommend like trying to watch a Hollywood movie to try to learn. I would focus on a much shorter clip of something. So that's, again, what we do in Fluent for Life. It's maybe like, it could be 20 minutes to a half hour or something of a conversation, but that's broken down and you learn that whole thing over a month. So you really take the time to know it the same way natives do. So find something short, don't read a long novel or watch a long movie. It should be something shorter. CN says, even though I'm not able to understand completely, is it beneficial to watch TV series without subtitles? Yeah, I mean, it should be something you can understand pretty well, though. Fried Star, do we need to differentiate the usage of speaking English from writing in terms of word choices? Yes, and again, you learn situationally, like what stuff is good for writing and what's good for speaking, or both. Keiko, yes, I also try to look closely at the native's mouth. Yes, I mean, even you can certainly pay attention to how people's mouths are moving, but even just listening to examples of things, that will help you as well.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, says Tom. All right. Press Santh says, I am fluent in English while talking through phone, but live conversations, I couldn't. What is the reason? I don't know. You'd have to think about what that is. Like, do you have trouble speaking in person in your native language? Like try to isolate what the problem is, because it could be a lack of confidence, or you're just worried about how you look or something. There are lots of reasons why people could be shy about that. Let's see. Next, some teachers in my country teach us consider pattern first, then add in vocabulary, which is translate from my mother tongue. Do a native speaker think pattern before they speak? Well, I mean, natives are like I've given these examples up here. Situations are connected with vocabulary. That's what natives are doing. So they're looking at a situation and looking at like the various patterns that they could use in that situation. So all these things over here about sitting down, these are each a different language pattern. And so you can communicate in a different way or use different vocabulary depending on the situation. But I would not be mixing any like grammar rules or anything from a different language or whatever. Ralph again says, that's it, you skipped it again. I'm buying you some serious glasses. Just kidding though. No, just post the whole comment. What is the comment about? I think Friends is a good series to watch for English learners. How to build confidence while speaking English. Yes, you actually build confidence before speaking English. That's what this video is about. So you become confident in vocabulary as you understand it really well. And that's how you get fluent. Yosef says, hi, good morning from Indonesia. I'm Yosef. I really like your method, how you teach English conversation. Thanks. And Raymunda says, why do recorded English conversations on the phone sound different from in-person ones? I don't know. I guess the communication itself would be a little bit different because you can't see the other person. And in that way, like, it would make a conversation I'm having a little bit different. Like I can see what the other person is doing, like if they're pausing or doing something else. All right, let's see here. We'll take a few more before I lose my voice. Let me see here. Let me read this here. So Citaline Lee, let me know if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Where are you from? Lee? Are you from China? Or someplace else? Drew, in your opinion, what is the best way to go from beginner to advanced student for those who don't have the opportunity to buy your program? You just get examples the same way native kids get examples. So that's how you would do it. I mean, you're basically looking for like levels of information that's understandable to you. So what would a child watch? And not like little babies or whatever, because a lot of that it's not actual language. It's just like blah, 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 like not real language. But like starting from zero, I would just get Frederick and also watch the beginning English playlist that I have on my channel. So I take people from absolute beginner to understanding the language, like, and it's all learning it in English. So those are the two things I would do. And then you can just continue going from there. Looking at, usually it should be some kind of situational learning where you're watching people do something or you're talking about a particular thing. But especially if you're either teaching kids or new people, you need to have something physical where people can show you where things are or what's happening, and it's easy to understand like that. And that's why, like in the visual guide to phrasal verbs, I do that so you can actually see me doing stuff. Like I play with little Legos, and you can actually see like how things work like that. Let's see. And Simon, do you have social media? Well, this is social media. So here in Instagram, you can look at links for those things in this description below this video. Oh, it's just a nickname. Don't worry about pronunciation. I'm from Uzbekistan, now living in New York. Okay. What would stop you from joining Fluent for Life? Like the price of it, or what? Or you don't believe it would be helpful, or I'm curious. Like anybody out there that's like, I'm thinking about this, but maybe Drew is lying to me. I don't know. We'll see. Archego says, I agree. Friends is good teaching material. Yes, and so you can watch that, but I would really recommend like take an episode and focus on it a lot. And what I mean by that is watching maybe other YouTube videos where people are talking about the episode, or read something about it and getting that kind of thing. So kids make mistakes in other languages too. Let's see, I think we got that. Yeah. And then Tom says learning material. Yes, so you can do this on your own. Like you can, it's possible to do. That's how I did it. But it's a pain in the ass. Because if you don't understand something, then you're frustrated and you have to find out what it means. And if you're trying to do that like all in the native language, it's just more difficult. But if you have a teacher who can show you how to do it, then it's much faster because you don't spend your time looking for answers. You just get the answers and keep moving. All right. Well, that's it. I think we should be at the end of our video here, but if you do have any questions about the programs or anything else, you can just send us a mail at info@englishanyone.com and we can help you learn. Yes, it's frustrating to do it by yourself, but that's why I made the whole program. All the stuff that I do, it's to solve problems that I had, and wanting to make sure that other people don't make those same mistakes, so I can help people do them. That's why I do what I do. But you can click on the links in the description. Definitely get Frederick, especially if you either by yourself are trying to learn and you want to get more information about learning like a native, or you want to help somebody else, like a child or someone that doesn't know any English at all, and they can actually teach themselves the language that way. But let's see, again, got one more question here. Now I can understand your English and can write well without grammar mistakes, but I couldn't speak fluently without grammar mistakes. What should I do? What should I learn more right now? Well, think about the grammar mistakes you get, and then go to just get more examples of that specific thing. So whatever, you usually know what particular things, like I'm good in this grammar point, but this one I need help with. But then you can easily get that just by looking for more examples of stuff. Teacher, you are great. Glad to hear it. Price: living in New York is expensive, rent, food, etc. Can you please remind me how much is your program? If you click on the link in the description, just send us an email. And we'll help you out. All right, Toki says, thanks heaps, Drew. Yes, it's my pleasure. All right, now before my voice completely dies on me again, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.